Hey guys, thank you for watching the Jesus and Jones podcast. I hope that you enjoyed the episode so far. And we just wanted to thank you guys for all your support and everything. And I just wanted to include in the beginning of this video, if you just like and subscribe, that'd help us out a lot. It really does so much for the channel, and you guys have already done so much just by watching and listening. So thank you guys again, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Father, forgive them.
Welcome to Jesus and Jones. I'm your host, Andon Jones, and the two men that are with me today are Thomas Kiser and his dad, Kevin Kiser. And Kevin is a spiritual father to me and is a literal father to Thomas, and a spiritual father as well to Thomas. He's the man of God, father to two sons and one daughter, husband to a loving wife, and he's a spiritual father to many, not just me and Thomas. And he works at Blue Cross Blue Shield, while also being the president of a nonprofit organization called The Ladder. And The Ladder is a nonprofit that helps families in need of transportation, but also financial support in hard times. And their motto is a helping hand to people who are climbing up. And we're so excited to have him on today and talk shop on everything God has blessed Kevin to be a part of and the audience to get to know his story. So thank you, Mr. Kevin, for joining Jesus and Jones today.
Good to be here.
Dad, welcome to the podcast. This is crazy.
Not gonna lie, this is a little strange.
A little bit.
Podcast with
We're gonna break the ice though. It's gonna be okay. So, I guess let's get straight down to the business talk, to the brass tacks, if you will. One thing I can tell you guys is that my dad barely uses social media, if at all. And if he does, he's constantly making posts about his nonprofit that he's involved with called The Ladder. And Dad, why don't you tell us a little bit about The Ladder? Kind of like, if no one's ever heard about it before, you can start with what kind of charity it is or anything along that line. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'm going to start with our fundraiser, which is May 16th. We're calling it Casino Royale. And you should be able to find it under really any of us on social media, you, me, or Andon at this point. Andon, if I haven't sent it to you, I failed already, so I'll get it to you.
You're all good. I checked it out on the website.
We're having a fundraiser for the charity. It's a casino night. It's just play money, but it's fun. It's real prizes. Play money, but real prizes. So there'll be a blackjack table. There'll be a roulette table. All the classic casino games.
Poker
Karaoke.
Yet? Did we get poker?
Have not followed through on whether we'll have poker. But you know what? Yeah, we'll have poker.
There we go.
I'll play poker. I'll play poker with you if I have to do it myself.
We'll just have I'll have a private table over there.
Yeah, you can set up a game. So yes, and the idea is really just to let people have fun, hear a little bit about the charity, but also maybe introduce some of our clients, let them tell their stories, let some of the other people from the board share, and really just kind of make friends, but also just make some money, because we have so much opportunity and so much need out there. And even for a small charity like ours, we only scratch the surface of what we could do. I literally have to turn people away every day to just not even take the application to go out. It's like there's no way right now. So really, that's kind of the big thing is getting ready for that May 16th. You asked me what it does. The charity itself is a little bit trickier to explain. My shortcut for it is I tend to say it's kind of a venture capital firm for people. So a lot of charities are easier to explain because you just kind of say they do this. So there are charities that give out food, or they help people with rent, or maybe they do job training. They kind of have a lane, and they do that lane, and they do it pretty well. What we do is much broader, a little bit harder to explain. We partner with those charities and churches and community And we'll let those folks that we've partnered with recommend people to us to say, there's something special about this one. There's something where they could really, and that's why we named it the ladder, where they could climb the ladder of success. They could really elevate themselves if someone would just invest in them. So when we have one of those recommendations, we have them fill out an application, we vet it with our board, and then we send them to a life coach who will do a 2-session evaluation to determine if they're coachable. Will they listen? Will they be truthful? Are they going to share their whole story? And will they take advice? So we kind of give a 2-session trial run. And if that goes well, then we'll kind of come back to the board and say, now, what did we determine this person needs? What's either their next step or their root cause, perhaps? So we may solve an immediate problem. Maybe they're facing an eviction, or maybe they're needing to get some kind of transportation need met in some way or the other. We may deal with that, but we're also going to be telling our life coach to dig out to the issue of how did they get themselves into this situation where this was where they needed to be. So we kind of determine from those steps then what to do. And we have done a little bit of everything. So you mentioned transportation. Because the people who end up referred to a charity tend to kind of be at the bottom of the ladder, so to speak, transportation needs are usually one of the highest things. So we have tended to get involved a lot in cars, either fixing them or helping them acquire them. But it's also finances. We've done what we call microloans. We do 0% loans to some of these clients. And with some of them, we partner with them of how much we actually let them keep. So sometimes we go into it, tell them it's a loan. And if they've been really good clients and really elevated themselves, maybe some of it ends up not a loan. And also that depends on our fundraising, which I mentioned again, May 16th is casino night. So depending on how well that goes, depends on how much some of that ends up being loans and how much of it can be a straight up grant of some type to those people in need. And they come from all walks of life and all flavors, and the problems are always a little different, but also pretty common sometimes.
Okay, wait. So I want to pause real quick right there. So you just said that any money that is donated to you guys, anything that comes in, goes directly to helping you not have those strings attached. Like it helps have just straight up investment in people instead of loans.
This is one of the good things about the ladder. It's also one of the bad things about the ladder is we are 100% volunteers. Yeah. So there is no staff. There is no one to organize this fundraiser that's not a board member. There's no one to go pick up a car, drop a car off, go make a rent payment, collect a door prize even for the casino night if it's not one of us. So that's good, and it's also bad. We have been in both models to some extent. We had an executive director for a while, and that was really nice. But also it's really nice that we can tell people every dollar raised goes straight in the hands of people.
That's what I wanted to key in on, like, especially anybody watching this, like your money, when you give to the ladder, goes to these people. And the more money that you give, the more it's able to go straight to them, and they just get to keep it without worrying about, having to have loans and pay that stuff back. So that's what I was trying to hit on. Like, donate, go to the fundraiser, give what you can. It goes straight to those people. So you directly see the impact that your donations have.
We have lots of vision. We hope someday to build this up to something that's a little more structured and formal in terms of maybe we'd have somebody in the office or an executive director kind of thing to help do some of the fundraising and maybe write some of the grants and do some of the legwork on some of this. We have had that before. It was nice, but we're in a season of, everything is lean right now.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So we're in that same season of just trying to be really good stewards of every penny that comes our way. It just goes out the door. And we don't spend, if you look at our website, we don't spend a lot of money on a website. We don't spend a lot of money or time on anything frivolous. So a lot of what we do is really on the ground trying to get help for people.
Right.
Thomas, you've gotten sucked in with me some nights to go pick up a car somebody's donated, or one that we're going to try to fix, or some of that stuff. So you've been pulled in on some of this.
It's been for a while. I remember years ago of just the roots of this thing just getting started, and somebody finding a car, like source a car, we go get the car. You and I directly will wrench on anything that it's having issues with. And I literally remember me and you and Pastor Tony from Church of Highlands, Pastor Tony's driveway, working on that car, ready to I don't remember exactly who was going to or what, but same thing when the roots of this was just starting. You and I went to go work on the car. We didn't send it to a mechanic or anything. We worked on the car. And it's just it's crazy to see how far it's grown already.
Yeah, it's really an answered prayer of how the ladder kind of came about. It really did kind of was a God thing of how it was organized and put together. And it's funny. Yeah, that car you're talking about was actually pre-ladder. So that was just kind of something that we were doing to help a lady that was I think she was in Karen's small group, if I remember right.
She was, I think.
And Pastor Tony had a car, and he said, he would donate the car to her if someone would fix it. And so you and I went over there and fixed it. And I think that was maybe car 2.
But that was the roots of this forming, because we had done it, like you said, already, and then we did it again. And then I think you just saw like a need and an ability.
Well, if you want to talk about the roots, I can sort of tell you the roots from my side. But the cool thing is there are roots from the other side as well. Yeah. Because I'm not on this thing by myself. Mm-hmm. There's actually probably people more important to the ladder than I am. So while you and I were wrenching on some cars and giving them out, I had a plan. And as God always does, he laughed at my plan. He thought my plan was pretty funny.
That's right.
But my plan was actually to build out a ministry at Highlands, Church of the Highlands, and have them get into the car ministry world, because so many needs around our particular campus at River Chase were around cars.
Transport.
And no one was able to do anything with it. And in fact, kind of what, and you'll remember this, Thomas, we always do that Giving Hope. And one of the Giving Hope sessions, right around that same time frame, they came in and they gave us this really strong push. Hey, make sure today as you're doing the clients, and Giving Hope is for the people listening, Giving Hope is a big program that Church of the Highlands does at every campus. I don't know the statistics. I wish I did. It'd be great to talk about right now. So maybe y'all can plug that a different day. Yeah. But tremendous numbers of people receive Christmas gifts for their family. So they apply. Disadvantaged families come through there, and you'll have a shopping buddy, which is what Thomas and I were doing. That Saturday, we were shopping buddies for people, and we worked with probably 6 families. And they stressed, like, hey, make sure you invite these people to church. Encourage them to come to church. And of the 6 families that I shopped with, only one of them had any sort of transportation to get to church.
Yep.
And so we were at sort of, our River Chase campus, more or less a suburban campus, and we had all these folks coming through there who, when I would talk to them about coming back to church, they were like, well, I can't, my car quit on me, and it's, been disabled for 6 months, and I can't work. And since I can't work, that's why I couldn't buy Christmas gifts. And so what I was finding was most of these people were having a difficult Christmas because they didn't have reliable transportation, or because they were disadvantaged, they didn't have reliable transportation. Either way, they all had transportation issues. None of them could get to church. And the Lord just kept putting people in front of me who were having all these transportation issues. So in complete and total arrogance, I decided that I was going to design and develop a car ministry, but I was going to do a lot of research before I rolled that out. And as I was doing the research, I got plugged into some people with City of Birmingham who were trying to roll out a transportation program for this whole revitalized Birmingham. I actually got offered a couple of jobs with some of those folks to go start up this whole transportation ministry / organization for serving greater Birmingham. But my heart was not, I didn't feel like that's really what I was meant to do. And honestly, it seemed like everyone was having difficulty getting that done at scale. So the more I did research on this, the more I found how challenging car ministry actually is. Like, there's not a lot of people doing it. I found maybe 2 or 3 nationwide doing it at scale. And I did a lot of research, and I found maybe 2 or 3. And then in the comments to this video, somebody can tell me that I'm wrong, and there's lots more, but that's all I really found. And I talked to most of them. And there were a couple of guys local who were doing it and doing it really, really well. But again, it's tough. Like, it's a lot of effort and liability and organization. So I thought, well, we'll just do something kind of smallish, and I'll stand it up and model it. And I know the way Church of the Highlands works. I've been in a lot of volunteer leadership roles with them, and I'm like, I know how they're going to be. They're not going to take on anything until you've proven the model that it'll work. So I was like, well, let's go see if we can copy some of what these other folks did, put our own tweak on it, and build it out. So I started a folder, and I started designing how it would work. And I even got so far as going around and talking to a lot of the local mechanics and seeing if I could put them on some kind of rotation. Because when you start talking about cars, you're talking about, you need people to donate them, you need people to work on them, you need people for maintenance, you need people to fix things. And anything you even do get donated, you've got to go through it. And all sorts of liability issues flop up when you start doing that at any kind of scale. You do it small, like kind of under the radar, like sort of what Thomas and I did, where we fixed that one in the driveway and gave it away. But you would not want to do that at any sort of scale. It's just a lot of exposure to liabilities, frankly, on lots of fronts. So I was putting all this together and kept getting introduced to all these other folks. And then simultaneously, while I'm doing that, there's a gentleman. His name is Dave Woods. And in fact, you guys should have him on your podcast sometime. Dave was starting a business, or had started a business. His business was doing well. Dave was coming from a recovery background, and he had a heart for trying to sort of pay back. He felt like he'd been granted a second chance and a lot of blessings on his second chance at life. And, you know, in that recovery space, there's a lot of talk in that about really just trying to invest in others and pay it forward and kind of, I don't want to say make up. That's not the right word, but really just kind of invest in other people. So he had a heart for doing this, and he didn't want to just be hands off with it. And he felt like he was being called to do something hands on and maybe something a little different. So Dave was having conversations with people about maybe starting some kind of charity, didn't really know what exactly. And some of the people who knew that I was talking about this, and they knew I was sort of being pushed into this whole transportation charity model. And again, I'm shortcutting some of that, but there was a lot going on with people affiliated with these charities at the City of Birmingham and things. So at some point they connected Dave, Laura, who was our executive director for a while, and myself. And the three of us kind of got together and realized, hey, there's some synergies here. We're all trying to kind of get this going. And then another gentleman who had a nonprofit, it was called Provisioned Ministries. His name was Kyle. I'm sorry, I don't remember Kyle's last name. I'm sorry, Kyle. But Kyle was running Provision Ministries, and he was feeling like his season of that was kind of over, and he was going to unwind it. So Kyle actually, in the middle of all this, and there was a gentleman, Martin. Can't remember Martin's last name either. But Martin was one of those folks affiliated with the city, had a lot of connections, and he kind of got all four of us together. And within about a 2-day period, Kyle gave us his already stood up 501c3 nonprofit. It had already been registered.
Wow.
He already had bylaws. He had everything. So he gave that to us with some money in the bank. And we formed a board and changed the name of it from Provision Ministries to the Ladder. We had a series of meetings about a week long or so, and Dave brought in some people that he knew. Laura and I already knew each other, and we stood up a board. And that first week we went through the bylaws and we tweaked a few things. We changed things that said the Ladder to Provision Ministries. We changed some stuff. And then we set about kind of casting what our vision would be. And we sort of landed on this model of the Ladder. Now, the part about having a life coach, we didn't start with that. So that was one of the things that the Lord brought us someone through one of our clients, that this is someone who had been a life coach for them. And they told us about him. He came in and told us what he did. And from that day forward, we sort of made participating with a life coach part of the model. But when you talk about, I was over here kind of floundering about for a bit, and you're right, Thomas, we did give away some cars, and we did some things, and I had a few meetings, or I had a lot of meetings with a lot of people, and I had a lot of vision, but we didn't really do much. We were just in this research mode. And then Dave had this vision of what he wanted to do, or didn't know what exactly it was, but that he wanted to be hands-on serve. And then we all got together, and it all just fell in place pretty quickly. And what was unique about it is he gave us this vision of what we were going to do. And we all had this same kind of governing principle of we were not going to start a nonprofit just to have a nonprofit. And that's why we don't just focus on cars, because there are people who do cars. And frankly, they would do cars better than we do cars. So
Yeah.
if cars were going to be our passion, we'd be better off to go help them.
Yeah.
And get on board with their. What we looked for was an unmet need, and it just kind of kept falling in our lap of there's this unmet need for kind of working with referrals from other nonprofits and charities for kind of people who could really prosper. And that's why I like to say it's an investment firm or like a venture capital firm for people. So you kind of got to be recommended. You kind of got to be vetted. You've got to be coachable. You've got to kind of stick to the program. And if so, we work with you. So we've had, and that's not to say, again, there's no hard and fast model on that of what our client has to look like. We've had some people we stepped in, solved a particular problem for them, and stepped back out pretty quickly. Frankly, those have not been our most successful models, though, because oftentimes those people get themselves in trouble again. So as we've kind of grown our identity now, we're pretty firm now of kind of what we are. And that is, we're someone that invests in people that are coachable. And we follow them long term, and we stay engaged with them. And our board is pretty hands-on even. So we know our clients by name. We talk to them. We try and run most of it through our life coach. His name is Chris Kraft. Shout out to Chris Kraft. The name of his organization is
last name.
blood flow coaching. And Chris is just instrumental in everything we do now. So we kind of make sure that the people that we're continuing to invest in are people who are listening to his advice and people that are really being coachable by him.
Yeah.
So just as a for instance, if you get approved from the board and you sit down with Chris, the first thing he's going to do is make you go through your budget and outline where's all your money going and how did it get this way. And that's where you'll find like the issues and the problems oftentimes. But he'll also uncover things like family dynamics that just aren't working or things of that nature. Maybe even uncovers an addiction problem. And that's where we have to step in and go, hey, you have to deal with this, or you have to take some steps in this, or. And I think that's another thing that probably separates us from some other charities. We say no a lot. We say, hey, this doesn't look like the kind of client that will be a good long-term investment. And I think some of that is because we're pretty lean, again, financially. We tend to be pretty choosy, frankly, choosier than I want to be. I'd love to be able in a position where we're so well funded, we could take a gamble, And we have a board member, her name's Olivia. She's very high discernment. And so we lean on her a lot to kind of go, hey, what's your gut feel on this? And she'll often, kind of steer us one way or the other of let's take a chance on this one, or I don't have a good feeling about this one. So we lean on her a lot, and we really value that from her. But Dave was instrumental in this because he was having those conversations with Martin when we were getting started, and I was having conversations with Martin, and that's how it all kind of came together, and we formed the ladder and put a board together, and it's been super successful for a nonprofit to kind of come together that quickly.
Yep.
And then, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point and given it all away. And it's been super successful. So I can talk some more about that if you want to, but I'll let you guys kind of move it around.
Yeah, like one thing, because I know you're so passionate about this, and this is really like God's put on your heart to just be a servant of other people and to help provide for other people. What is your favorite story? Because on the website, I've checked it out. There's so many client testimonials of people that just have been helped in so many ways, and I love y'all have a photo for it. So not only is it a name, but it's a photo for a lot of them. What's your favorite story about a person or a family that you're able to help because of the ladder?
It's a good one.
So I'm going to go with one of our early clients, and I'm not going to say her name just because I don't know if she would want us to or not, but
all good.
She was one of the early clients, and she was actually the one who told us about Chris Kraft, our life coach. And she was, at the time we met her, heavy in debt, struggling to keep custody with her child because she was actually living and working at a sober living type facility. I don't know if it was exactly what type of facility, but she was living and working there. Not the greatest environment for her to have that young child in, and yet kind of stuck, wasn't able to kind of take those next steps. And we worked with her. We solved some financial problems, but we also held her really highly accountable. She was on one of those loan programs, and she had like high interest credit card loans. That's a common thing too. We find with our clients is they don't understand a lot of times how credit works. So they will end up with these high interest loans, or they've pawned a car title, or just done one of those things where they've ended up with some super high interest. And we'll find like they're not even paying the bare minimum on that to keep even. Like the bill's just getting bigger. And so she had one of those situations. We paid all that off and put her on the loan. So she went from, 21% or 25% interest on thousands of dollars to 0%.
Wow.
And then she paid us back on time every month, never missed a payment. And then when we got to the end of it, that was one of those where we were able to say, hey, take some of this back now. You made all your payments. Take some of this back. You now have an emergency fund.
Wow.
And we also had her set up with life coaching, who was helping her work through kind of life planning. How do we take the next step? How do we get you into a better living arrangement? How do we get you into a different kind of job? So she is now, I think she's on her third or fourth job past that. And she is now a ladder donor. So she's gone from making loan payments to us to she's just a donor.
To give back. Yeah.
She speaks at a lot of our events, and she's actually opening doors for us. In fact, she's so successful that she's now a member of the Hoover Chamber of Commerce. So she invited the ladder to come set up a booth at the Hoover Chamber of Commerce and kind of tell our story. And she opened that door for us. And now she's a successful businesswoman. She's doing great things out in the community, great public speaker, great model of business, and has a successful family and is managing her finances well and giving back to other people. So she's absolutely one of my favorite stories to tell. And we have several that way that have worked that model and come all the way through to the other side. Probably she's our most successful so far, but we have several in the program right now that I feel like are going to do really, really well.
And like something you mentioned, and that's because I'm going to bring this up because me and Thomas definitely have some insight in your life and the way you have not just hold events, but just have your heart and your home always open to ministry opportunities. And you mentioned accountability. And so I kind of want to go in that for a second, if you want to, of like, how important has accountability been in your life and to other people in your life?
I was really hoping we were going to get to a point where we could plug an accountability group, because I wanted to, like, same as you, I wanted to talk about it while we actually have you on here, since you're kind of like the founding father of the whole thing. So we, like, for quick context, we have, out of our little area around Church of the Highlands, we have probably 5, some of these are unofficial, but probably 5 men's accountability groups that are small groups, but they're focused around accountability. But they all started, they're like the very first one started with this guy right here. So tell us a little bit about some accountability.
So, well, actually, the ladder kind of came out of that in a sense, and I'll see if I can loop back and tie that in later. So maybe just remind me how are these linked? So the accountability groups kind of came through. Let me gather a thought here.
You okay?
So I have been involved in church pretty much my whole life in some facet or form, and lots of different roles and ebbs and flows. But during this one particular season, I felt like I really needed to step up as a husband and as a father and just do a better job of some things. And I knew that I was going to need some accountability with men of God in order to really do that. So my idea was, Pastor Chris always tells this story. Mm-hmm. And it comes out in some form or fashion where he did a small group. He did it in the back of a restaurant in one of those little private rooms. And it was just a group of men, and they were going to just kind of check in on each other And he says, first week, they asked some questions, hey, how you doing? How's everything? And everybody was like, everything's fine. And then by the second or third week, somebody finally opened up and was like, I'm not fine. I've got big issues and I don't know what to do. And then the floodgates opened. And Pastor Chris said, like, those men are still important men in his life. And a lot of them, he said, were leaders in the church even now and trustees. And I thought, that's kind of the spirit of what I'd love to do. And at the time, I was one of the volunteer leaders for the men's small group program. It's myself and Dale Tyler. I was helping Dale. And so I put a small group out there for men's accountability group or something. And again, now I'm in charge of the small groups, or at least partially. And I put this group out there. I'll never forget it. It was a total failure to launch. No one, and I mean no one, signed up, like nothing. And our small groups pastor, Pastor Tony Jones, gave me a stack of cards and said there were some men who filled out some cards at the last men's night and that wanted somebody from church to follow up on them, or maybe to get plugged into a small group. Why don't you just go through those cards and follow up for me and just make sure we've connected with all those guys? And there's maybe 6 guys. I called all of them, but one in particular stands out. His name was Trey Russian. So I called Trey and said, hey, I'm just following up on some cards that were turned in for men that might be interested in, getting better connected. He said, yeah, man, I'm going through it. And he started telling me about some of what he had going on. It was a lot. And he said, my counselor said that my next step, like I couldn't really do anything else in terms of healing myself or healing my marriage or any of the issues. He said, I have to find an accountability partner, somebody that I can partner with. And I started laughing, and I was like, well, partner, got news.
Yeah.
Turns out I tried to launch an accountability small group, and no one signed up. So I'm your huckleberry, I suppose. So what night do you want to meet? And that's how we got started. So I started meeting with Trey. And again, the Lord does a really good job of keeping me humble these days. So Trey and I started meeting, and we had this vision, again, of, man, this is what we need. We need this program. We need men in accountability small groups doing this stuff. We really need this. And we're gonna build this out. So again, we sat down, we wrote out a curriculum, we wrote out the questions that you guys use now, we wrote down all the backup scriptures of why these are great questions and what to do with certain answers and how things biblically should be responded. We had all this stuff written down.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we're ready. We registered the small group. I registered it again the next semester, put Trey as a co-leader. And this time we had exactly the same amount of people sign up.
0.
Trey and I went through it again, just he and I.
Just you two.
Just the two of us. But it just wasn't time.
Yeah.
And it really, I think it was really about me more than Trey, just the Lord wanting to make sure that I knew this was his thing. It didn't have anything to do with me, and me trying to launch it just wasn't going to work. So the next time, reluctantly, we registered it. We assumed that we would have nobody, and we really didn't have anybody until I think it was a couple of weeks beforehand. Jackie, that runs the coffee shop, called me over and said, I heard you were trying to do an accountability group. There's a couple of guys here that work at the coffee shop, and I've been mentoring them kind of since I'm, in charge of the coffee shop, but they need a man. I'm going to send them to you. And that was Isaac and Ethan.
Ah,
That was
Well,
Isaac and Ethan. And then Ethan brought Jonathan with him.
yep.
And while I was meeting and talking with them, Trey and some other guys, again, men's night at church rolled around, and we got connected with lots of different men. And we started from there and went from, 0 to about 8. And it's been just growing steadily since then. And I think at this point, you and Thomas do a Wednesday night group for young guys with Ethan. And then on Thursday nights, we have 3 groups. And we've had some other groups spawn off, like you said, kind of unofficial off the books. But on the books, the production team at church, Heath's production team at church, they do a couple of groups, I think. They've got 2. Oh, and you guys may not know this. They've stood up their first women's group.
Whoa, women's accountability?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's
wow.
That's
hot off the
taking
press.
Over.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
So, and again, there's literally nothing in this that hasn't been done before. Since then,
right.
Pastor Chris has preached a couple of sermons about these accountability groups. I think he's probably heard some rumblings.
I think he's
around
aware.
This.
I think we're on the radar.
Either that or the Holy Spirit really stirs him, because
I think we're on the radar.
He indirectly talks about it a lot.
Yeah, he does.
And and some of it may be Ethan, because Ethan got featured on Men's Night.
Yep.
And did the whole video promo thing for his story.
Yep.
So maybe that got into kind of the subconsciousness of some people. But Pastor Chris talked about it several times. But again, there's nothing unique about what we're doing, because he talked about it, saying that, and he read you the questions.
I mean, like literally.
Now those questions were the original questions that the United Methodist Church used to use when they were forming. They formed as kind of a little club originally, and they had some questions that they did. And he was reading some of those questions, and King Solomon said, "There's nothing new under the sun."
Yeah,
and there's really not. Now, all this stuff that we're doing has been done in some shape or form. The power to it, and it's been by far the most powerful Christian discipleship thing that I've been part of. And again, I've been around this a long time, and it's not because it's unique. It's because it's sincere. And there's just, I call it a spirit of David. David was a very, very flawed, he's a flawed man. Yeah. But the Bible describes him as after God's own heart. And it wasn't because David did great things. That's part of it, I'm sure. But it wasn't just because David was a worshiper, although I'm sure that was part of it. David was a great repenter. He repented better than anyone. Like, he would fall on his face and roll around in the ashes and talk about how awful he had been. And also he would go to God with his raw emotion about how much he was struggling and what he was frustrated about. And we bring that same spirit of David into those accountability groups. Just be real. Just be real with God and be honest about it. And the power of men being honest and being honest with God about what they're struggling with, but also what they're afraid of, what they're dreaming for. And there's just so much power in that. So to tie that back in, one of the questions, and we modified questions as we went. You guys helped with that as well. But somewhere along the way, we added 2 questions that I think are some of the most powerful questions for men. And it's, what are you afraid of? And then what are you dreaming about?
Fears
and dreams. The 2 things also, generally, not always, but they generally sort of cancel each other out. Your fears are holding back your dreams, and your dreams will sort of cancel out your fears if you move on them. So those two questions have just become kind of my favorites out of all of them. I mean, and one of my dreams was around the time that Thomas, you and I worked on that car in Pastor Tony's driveway. And I said, one of my dreams was to maybe start a nonprofit and be able to help people at scale in a way that we just weren't doing. And I think it was that next week, Isaac said, my grandmother wants to give us a car.
Yep.
Wants you to give away a car. So Isaac was at the small group. He heard it, and then somebody heard about the cars, and then I started getting introduced to people. And the next thing you know, I had more opportunities to do this than I could literally do. So it came through speaking into the dream of that small group. One of the other dreams that Trey and I used to speak when it was just Trey and me was that we would have this movement of men to be accountable to each other, to be better men, and to just be consistent with trying to do that. And to have an answer to a question. So we just both felt we'd both been through freedom groups at church. And if you don't know what that is, somebody could Google it. But it's just it's literally in the name. It's a program that you go through, small group and a conference where you try and let go of the past and work with God to free you from some of the things that you've been holding on to. So what we talked about is once you've been through freedom, and a lot of times people go back through freedom, they go through freedom again, and then they'll lead, and then they'll co-lead, and then they'll co-lead, and then they'll lead again, and then they'll lead, and then they'll go to the conference, and but eventually, at some point, what do you do post-freedom? And my shorthand for that was, how do you stay free?
Stay free.
How do you stay free? And that's where we felt like we had something to offer, like, come get plugged in. And
right.
It isn't just community, there's consistency.
Yeah.
Because if you do it right, you're going to answer those questions every week. And you're going to be with men who know you well enough to know when you're not being truthful about it.
Yeah.
And they're going to hold you accountable and try to help you get better. So that's been one of my other dreams, is just seeing that. And Thomas, I mean, just to be straight up honest with you, one of my dreams was that you would get plugged into one of these groups. Because at the time when this started, you were not plugged into something like this. Of course, you were younger and your living arrangements were a little different, of course. So,
yeah.
But my dream was that you would get plugged into it. And again, God, always capable of much more than our plans. I didn't even dream big enough. I didn't dream that not only would you attend one, you would branch off and lead one, and that you would make friendships with godly men of God to the point that y'all launch podcasts together and go talk about God. I mean, this is far exceeded my dream of what I had hoped. I was just like, maybe someday he'll come and not think it's lame. Because he used to go like, what are you doing on Thursday nights with all those old men?
It is lame the first couple times. It's like you said, the consistency is the power.
The consistency is the power. There's no magic in the questions, and the scriptures are just the same scriptures you would use with, most all of life.
Key verse is James 5:16, just for the people, if you want to go look at that.
So, and again, it's nothing you haven't heard or anything that's earth-shattering about it. It's the consistency in doing it. And I think the idea that we were very and again, in God's timing, he seems to always place very transparent people with a lot of passion early into the group. I'll mention Andon. Andon was one of those that first night, first week, he jumps off the deep end of the pool all into, here's my issues, here's my problems, I'm just going to get real. This is what I'm struggling with, and when you have one person do that, it frees everybody else up to do the same.
Icebreaker.
And it's one of my absolute favorite things about Andon is that he will break that barrier down in the same way that I know you wouldn't be doing this podcast without Andon.
No,
he's the activator to all that. He brings that passion to situations like that. And that's why I think you guys are a good team, because he brings the passion and you bring the consistency and the perseverance. And
I could just to say it, just to be funny, I could never get any guests on here without Andon, because the dude brings it up to, like, if he has an idea for a guest, he just owns it. Like it's the most established and successful thing. He's like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? Yeah, I got a podcast. We do this and this and this. And like, hey, the 27th, does that work for you? Like he's on it and he establishes it like it's,
and you guys are doing already big. You guys are doing a great job. I'm very proud of both of you. And I appreciate that you called me a spiritual father, and I'm very proud of that. I couldn't be more proud of the two of you, to be honest. So again, when you say, like, we get to the end of that and say, what are your dreams? That last question, to see you guys doing this podcast, again, it's one of my answered dreams. And to see Thomas leading a group, I mean, I just can't go back to, I remember when, my dream was that Thomas would walk strong in his faith. And I just didn't dream big enough. And that's one of the great things about God. And is he honors that consistency and that, and he's forgiving him a lot. Gracious knows he's had to forgive me of many, 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 many things over the years.
Mm-hmm.
His grace is way more than I deserve.
Mm-mm. And I just want to say, like, thank you both for edifying me and just lifting me up the way that you have. But like, just want to make sure that everyone knows that whoever listens to this is that Mr. Kevin, like, whenever I needed anything, especially when I was struggling and when COVID happened and my stepdad just had a lot of issues, and there were times that I couldn't go inside my own house because he was threatening to kill himself, and cops had to get involved, had to get my mom out of the house, and I was at work late at nights and I didn't have anywhere else to go. Like, Mr. Kevin, the house that he's in right now, that's the background. Like, without him, I would not be here right now, because he always opened up his home to me and just brought me in and loved on me the best way that he could. And I wouldn't be where I am right now starting this podcast without Mr. Kevin's obedience to what God's put on his heart for serving young men and just his heart for leaders and pouring into young men and making sure that, like, his dreams and his visions include other people. Like, he actually pours in other people and he wants other people to succeed, because he's had his own, which I love to get into. He's had his own, he's had to learn a lot from his own mistakes as a father and as a husband. So he knows what it's like to go through struggle, and go through strife, to go through financial trouble. And now he's able to bless other people with his finances and with his dreams and what he has for this vision for the charity, the small groups, and just his overall, just who he is as a human being. So thank you, Mr. Kevin.
It was my pleasure. And I didn't do any of that alone. Karen's got such a heart for opening our home to people. We have, I guess, on Thursday nights when we have that accountability group, we will have, I guess these days, around 30.
Yeah, close to 30. Probably.
Close to 30. And on some days it's more than that. So you have about 30 men in your backyard, in and out of your house. I always laugh about it. Always blocking the driveway so Karen can't get out when she wants to. Leaving trash everywhere. We burn a tremendous amount of firewood too, because as you guys know, we'll have a fire pit in the backyard, and we'll
probably
sit
put a
around
hole
that
in
while we're
the
doing those
ozone layer
accountability
above that
things.
little part of our backyard.
Yeah, there's a hole in the tree canopy from all the smoke we have definitely used this place for.
It's like 3 years, right, of consistent twice a week now, twice a week a fire going. Sorry, that's dumb.
And on Thursday nights, sometimes we'll have 3 fires, at least 2. So I've had to buy extra fire pits and have a couple more fires, but it's a great problem to have. Karen loves it. She loves hosting and entertaining, and is always glad to do that, and shares that same passion. So couldn't do any of that without her.
100%, Miss Karen. I love Miss Karen. One thing, like, we've been bringing out a couple of things that I want to make sure and like hit back on. For you, how important has vision been for you and the ministry opportunities that God has given you, but also just like how you've been able to serve God's vision for your life and for your ministry, and especially the nonprofit as well. How important has vision been to you?
To be perfectly honest, probably not as good as it should be. I don't feel like I'm blessed with the greatest vision, and maybe it's just God's way of keeping me humble, but nothing has ended up like I thought it would at any point in my life. So, and it's better. Don't misunderstand me. It's all better than what I wanted. So I use Thomas as an example, right? My vision was, hey, maybe Thomas will actually, walk out his faith and be strong in his faith, and just be a godly man, and be a good godly husband and father someday. Did not ever dream big enough for him to be doing Christian podcasts, leading Christian small groups. Thomas does a lot.
Hey, me neither, son.
Thomas does a lot that people don't know about, where he also opens his home to his friends, which is sort of my home too, but he opens his home and brings in his friends and mentors them and coaches them and disciples them. I mean, he's always pouring into men around him too. And I'm so proud of that, but it's just such a bigger dream than I had, such a bigger vision than I had. And, again, my vision of the latter, or what I thought I was going to do in terms of maybe starting a nonprofit, this is so much better than anything I had in mind. Just like these accountability small groups, I never dreamed about it being any bigger than my backyard. Well, I did. I dreamed about it being bigger than my backyard, but I didn't have the vision of how it was going to take off that way.
I can tell you definitely didn't expect it to evolve into multiple other groups and some of those other unofficial ones are people from our group that go to do their own.
Yeah, there's some at other churches, and God bless him, Blake. Wherever Blake is, he's doing one.
Yeah, he is.
I don't even know. I don't even know what he is at this exact moment. But everywhere Blake ever went, whether it was at college, he'd be at college and he'd be like, "I passed through this college and I started an accountability small group." That's the man right there. I've got everywhere he went. Blake started an accountability small group. He's the Johnny Appleseed of it.
Yeah, he is.
And I don't know what Blake's doing right now. He's serving the Lord somewhere, I think in Florida. But wherever Blake is, he's doing one.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee it. But, his vision is so much better than mine. And there's been so many times where my vision was even shut down. So for purposes of example, think about when I was talking about Trey and I was like, my vision was we would get this thing launched and it would take off and it was going to be this great post-freedom curriculum idea and all that stuff, right? Well, my vision for it didn't manifest at all for a long time. And then all of a sudden, God took it and did it when his timing and did it his way. And it was much better than anything I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think my vision, I've learned to let go of my vision a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the best thing for me because I tend to be a little bit on the stubborn side and think that with enough perseverance, I can just get it done. And I've tended to, in my older age now, shift off that and just be more of we'll see what God does with it. I'll serve and just kind of go in that direction and we'll see what he does with it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And so I would say it plays less of an important thing now. I mean, I will say it's none. I just don't think that vision it's either not one of my gifts or I'm too flawed. And so I'm not allowed to get that vision in the way that I think it would be because that's maybe the way he keeps me humble.
Yeah.
I don't know which it is. Maybe a mix of both.
It's definitely it's definitely obedience. Like, I feel like that's one of your biggest strengths is like, regardless of the vision, regardless of what your plans or what you have, you've been so obedient to just being open to what God has for you. And you're just we said consistency a lot, but I would just like even say the word obedient. You've been so obedient to what the Lord's trying to work and do in your life for other people and yourself and your family. Like, it's definitely been obedience in your life, I would say,
Thank you. I think I appreciate that that's what it looks like. And I hope that that's what it is. So I'll say thank you. I don't know that that was always a strength of mine, but I have tried to lean into it now.
Yeah.
Again, I used to be pretty stubborn about just trying to get what I thought my vision was done. And it makes life a lot more fun when you get a little more flexible with that. And you just kind of go and see, well, I wonder what God's going to do with that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Or we'll see. I mean, I'll do my part.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. And it's just a little different. So I guess maybe that's where some of my hesitation to say vision has played a tremendous role for me. It's played a tremendous role in developing me in that I've had to learn what to do when you don't get your vision the way you thought it was going to happen, or especially in the timing. And, and again, we all have these visions for our life. My career looks nothing like I thought it was going to look like. I worked at a different company 15 years ago, and I was on a totally different career trajectory with them. They saw me in a light of a different way, in a different path, and just showered me with opportunities for advancement and things of that nature. And, I thought that was going to be my path. I was on a track and was going and doing things, and the Lord said, that's obviously not good for you. And circumstances in my life changed dramatically. And then, I settled into a different kind of career. And that kind of career has allowed me to be a better husband, be a better father, be able to do small groups and lean into those and to explore this nonprofit world. I don't know that I would have gotten those same opportunities with my vision of what my career was going to be.
Yeah.
I probably would have been the guy funding some of those nonprofits, but I probably wouldn't have been the guy building them.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord had a different idea for it. Either that or my own pride and stubbornness got in the way of that vision. It could be either thing.
Yeah.
Or a mix of both.
Did you want to dive a little bit a little bit deeper into your past and just kind of what's led you to this moment of where you're at with your family and with Thomas, and just your involvement at Highlands in Hoover, Birmingham, Alabama area?
Yeah, I'll touch on it. I guess
Yeah.
trying to speak to the listener out there who doesn't know Thomas or you or me, and
Right.
speak to them. I guess I would offer them the encouragement of I'm living proof that you can do a 2.0, that you can start over and do something else. Because if you had known me, geez, I'm old now. 17, let's see, 15, 18, I guess almost 18, 19 years ago. I'm not great with dates and times or last names, but if you had known me back then, you would know that I was a completely broken and defeated person. My company, and again, so I'll speak to it in some generalities. My company had been bought out, and again, my vision and the vision other people had for me, and this whole career trajectory that I was on. I had people who believed in me and saw me as an executive, and I was doing all these things, and company got bought out. I got offered a job in Kentucky and was sort of belaboring taking it. Didn't feel like I could because I had sick parents. I had an older brother with Down syndrome, and just didn't feel like that was probably going to be an option. But I was wrestling with it because I had too much of my identity wrapped up in achievement and career. And so I was wrestling with it. And then that's when honestly some marital problems revealed themselves, and that really rocked me to my foundation. And at that same time, my father passed. So I always say this, and they don't hold me to this. This might not be exact time frames. And Thomas, your mother is probably going to listen to this podcast, and she'll say I don't have this time frame right. But it felt like within about a 30-day period that, I had lost my father, found out I was losing my job, and lost my family within about a 30-day period. And that's also the time period in which we found out that Thomas's older brother, Timothy, my firstborn, that's when we started getting some test results coming in that he was going to be Timothy, and that the life was going to look a lot different for him and us than we had envisioned. So we had lost kind of that vision of what a firstborn son looked like. I lost a job. I lost a career path, really. You don't get those kind of opportunities back sometimes. And I knew it. And I was like, there is that whole thing. And even at the time, I was serving as a youth minister, and didn't feel like it was wise to even attempt that. I felt like I was, failing to minister to my own family, like I don't need to be ministering to anybody else's family. I clearly failed my own.
Wow.
So, that was a pretty dark time for me. And so I would just encourage people, if you're listening and you're going through a dark time, that was a pretty dark time. And I'm going to spare details on a lot of that stuff because, some of that is just not for public airwaves or for Thomas to have to sit and listen to with his dad, of how dark some of that would have been. But if you can imagine, that was pretty dark to go through that. And so I buried my father. I started looking for a job, and
my brother.
I started dealing with what Timothy was going to be. And this is where I'll say Thomas's mother handled that a little bit better than I did, or I should say a lot better than I did, because I think it hit me particularly difficult because I had an older brother with Down syndrome. So I had lived this life. I knew exactly what this was going to be like from firsthand. And I knew what Thomas's life was going to be like because I had been the little brother to a special needs child. Yeah. So I knew everything that was going to entail. Now, I did not know what being divorced and starting to date again was going to be like. And thank God I did not know, because it was worse than I knew it was going to be bad. It was worse than I thought. So again, these were difficult times. So I like to tell people I entered the dating pool a pretty successful person. I was soon to be unemployed.
Oh, yeah.
I was
a walking green flag.
I was 39 years old, and I had one in diapers and another one that was special needs. So it was I was quite the catch.
Oh man.
But thank you
so much for sharing that.
It was a tough season. I think the best thing to do with that is just acknowledge that was hard. And a lot of things that frankly I had wrapped my identity around instead of around God. And you would think God was in them, and I did. I thought God was in them. And I guess that would be my caution to anyone listening to this would be, make sure that your identity is in God and not in the things you do for God.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Because I had so much of me wrapped up in serving in the church, and I did good things, I hope, over that time. I certainly did some things that weren't great, but I think that God used that time, and I'm grateful for it. I did it a long time, and it was a big part of my life, and I missed it tremendously when it was over. But I think I had a lot of my own identity wrapped up in it, and more than I should have, in terms of like finding identity and success and achievement versus the Lord. And I had that same thing around. I served in a county government role, in addition to a challenging role in a Fortune 500 company, where I was doing that. And I was also serving in county government and on the county commission there. And I had a lot wrapped up in that. And again, good thing to be doing. My heart was in it to serve people. I helped a lot of folks in that role, but I had a lot of my own. I was medicating myself to achievement to a large degree. And it wasn't good for me. And it obviously wasn't good for my family, because it ended. And, as that marriage unraveled, that became one of the things I realized I had to own out of that, was like, man, I was pulled. I was not pulled. See, that's the wrong wording. I wasn't pulled in a lot of directions. I pressed myself in a lot of directions.
Yeah.
Just put the right words on that to make sure, because one way is like you aren't really responsible for it. Like, it wasn't your choices. No, I involved myself in all that stuff. And I had some pure motives in it. And I also had some insecurities in it that I was medicating by getting involved in all those things. So I would just always caution people, as you're walking out your faith, it's so easy the church is always in need, and the community is always in need of people to serve. So again, I was serving the community through a government role. I was serving the church through a youth minister role, and I mean, there was nothing I didn't get involved in. If you ask me, I would tend to gravitate towards it and do it, and all at the same time that I had my father was in the hospital an hour away, and I was pulling shifts over there, and my mom was an hour and a half away, and she had my brother with Downs that she was taking care of, and I was bouncing between the two of those, and my career, I was in charge of an IT shop in Fort Payne. I had people working for me in Atlanta. And then my day job was in Alexander City, and I was driving between all those places and doing all that. And I didn't take one thing off my plate. So, if that doesn't sound like a recipe for disaster, it should. Like you're baking a recipe for disaster. And so,
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk.
So thank you for sharing.
I'm not going to talk about how that all unraveled because it doesn't really matter. I'll talk about my part, which was that. That was not.
Yeah.
It was beyond unwise. It was beyond unwise. It was foolish, and it came from not being healthy. So if you could have told me then, so again, that was the death of a lot of visions, right? I thought about, I'd always served in the church, and I thought, well, I'm getting divorced. My days of serving in the church are over, and I'm never going to be an executive of anything anymore because, that's winding down. And
right.
I wasn't even sure what fatherhood was going to look like for me because I didn't know what this divorce was going to do to my kids. I'm like, I don't even know. My fear was I was going to end up one of those divorced dads that didn't see his kids. So, I didn't know. I just felt like it was the death of so many visions that I had. So if you could fast forward now to 18, 19 years later, and you could have told me that my vision of ministry and what we do now with these guys having these small groups and being accountable and doing that, I've seen the Lord move in that with so much power and so much miracles happening.
Yeah.
It's beyond anything I would have seen or done down that other path. For sure. Beyond anything I would have seen and done down that other path. And if you would have said like, hey, your son will end up co-hosting a Christian podcast, I would have been like, I'll take this deal. How did I get from here to there? I don't even know what that's going to look like. And I've been blessed to have a good, stable career,
Yeah.
Nothing like what I thought it was going to be in terms of, achievement and making money and success. I mean, I've done well, but nothing like what I thought that was going to be. But the Lord knew, and He put me down a different path to do different things for that season of life. And it's been wonderful. And of course, this is the point where I really need to say what a blessing it was in terms of bringing Karen into my life. And shout out to, speaking of former youth kids, shout out to Katie Rochester, who made the introduction to the person who knew Karen and who saw me through that whole process. And actually, Katie was just instrumental during that dark period. She was a real. It was funny because I had been her youth minister, and she was the one that ended up ministering to me, and kind of like, "Hey, you're gonna be all right. You can do this," and
That's great.
She would encourage me, inflate my ego a little bit, and tell me everything's going to be all right, and introduce me to people. And that's actually literally how I met Karen, was through one of my former youth kids that just believed. She believed in me and made that introduction, and I'm just grateful. So
yeah,
you can always, if you'll surrender your vision and let God have it and do it His way, He can take the broken pieces and put something together better than you were going to have on your own. So it looks a lot different, certainly, but my life has been much more blessed in many different ways than I had any right to expect.
Amen.
And I'm so grateful, because some of those days, there were so many bad decisions I could have made during those dark periods, and so much temptation in there to do some of that. And I feel like there were times the Lord just literally sent angels and stopped me from doing stupid stuff, and brought the right people, the right times to speak words of wisdom and encouragement. Again, and when you look at, again, I just got to go back to the fact that I have any kind of ministry, and it's so much. So, for instance, you look at county commission and go, and I thought my days of serving the community, I've stepped out of that role. And so, my days of serving the community are over, and now I run a nonprofit that that's all it does. And I thought, my days of church ministry are over, and I have 40 men in my backyard every week. And I'm like, now it looks different. It looks different, but it's better. And my role in it is much smaller, and yet it's much more effective. And I think that's the good thing, is the second time around, it's much less about me and what it looks like for me. The first time it was a lot about what it looked like for me, because I was trying to medicate through achievement.
Yeah, and I had
to do a lot of work to try and get that out of me. It's not all the way out. I have to guard against it still.
Yeah. And I think like something you hit on too is just like sometimes it takes even things that like are good, like not even bad. You being a youth pastor for a time, and like being involved in your community as a politician of sorts, like it took God to break some of those things, break your pride down, and break your ego and just some of that out of the way, so God could really use you. And like you said, it's not even about you really. It's just about like you humbling yourself and just, like you said, your house being open for the people to serve. And like one thing that something like when I took somebody's order sometime in the drive-through, like probably a month or so ago, he's like, I'm like, how are you doing, sir? He's like, oh, better than I deserve. Like that's what I feel like with as Christians. Like as a South Deacon, everybody says good, even that's just like the automated response. But it's like, man, like I know my life, I know Thomas's life, I know your life. Like when people ask us how we're doing, I'm like, man, I'm better than I deserve. Most definitely.
Oh yeah.
Well, again, if you look at what I was saying there, I screwed it up pretty good. Like, and again, my company got bought and all that stuff. But again, I chose to be at that company, and I saw that company was having some problems. I could have made some moves. There's some things I could have done, but I liked that. I liked the way they saw me. I had a lot of people there that I liked it. I liked having that ego boost of, man, these people think I am going places and doing things. I'm not leaving that.
Yeah.
And I just, the Lord just wouldn't, He had a different plan.
Yeah.
And again, when I tell you that things are better for me than I deserve, it's for sure true. That's very true. And again, why I'm just so proud of Thomas. I'm so proud of you. And it's one reason why again, why I have an accountability group of men. I want to make sure that I don't ever allow myself back into that place where I could get off the path and I could think that I was doing stuff okay and I wasn't. And I had all this stuff around me that I didn't need to have around me, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And if and that's really kind of what I try to do now. It is with this, in starting that accountability group that's turned into something now. Remember, it was never, although I had vision and dreams and hopes of something coming from it. If you look at what it was originally about, it was to keep me out of trouble. It was like, I need to make sure I have seen my life fall apart. I don't want that again. I need to make sure I have some guardrails of people who will see that kind of thing coming and help keep me straight.
Yeah.
So that's what that's all about.
Yeah, and something that, like, I don't know if this is the question that we end on or not, but it's been great to have. I mean, you already know that I love you so much, but just something that, like, I want to edify you and just like tell you is like, not only have you been a great father to, I mean, you two sons, but also a stepdaughter that it's not really a stepdaughter. That's your daughter that you brought, that was brought into your life through Miss Karen and Gracie, but like, especially just like a great spiritual father. How important, not just has fatherhood been to you in your life, but also like you being a father, like not only having a father and father being important to you, but you also being a father spiritually and just making sure to take care of people, even when they, it wasn't required of you to do so.
Well, again,
I want you to talk about that a little bit, because that's one of the things that, it's most important about you.
I would love to. And so again, I'll say this is where God's vision is better than mine. One of the things I was pretty brokenhearted about with my marriage falling apart is I'd always talked about having a big family and had ideas and visions of that. And in a lot of ways, I have that big family now, people like you and Ethan and some of the guys that have kind of come through that accountability group and things. It's been great. But you mentioned Karen and Gracie. See, I never again couldn't have dreamed that big of, if you'd asked me back then how would I have a daughter, I couldn't wrap my head around it, because I couldn't have seen that tragedy playing out the way that it did. But now, God knew. He knew that out there somewhere was Karen and Gracie, and he knew that they could use me. And that's been a tremendous blessing for me, but also just a tremendous responsibility that I've enjoyed. It's been one of those that you're like, hey, I'm a useful engine here. They need me. There's something here that I can do. And I think that was one of the most rewarding pieces out of that whole redemption arc, was just being able to kind of step into that situation. I love Gracie in ways I didn't even know were possible, because I'd only had boys. So I didn't really know what it was like to have a daughter, and then, all of a sudden I always say she's the daughter I chose, that's the daughter I chose. And she's just amazing. I love her. She's serving God herself. Again, when you talk about a dream, we made a list of what she should look for in a husband. We sat down with her and did it when she was little. And she literally married a man who checked every box on that list. Shout out to Benaiah.
Yeah.
Like he literally checked every box on the list that we had made for her. And I don't know that I again, when I made that list with her, if you'd told me, we'd get the top 5 things, would I take the deal? I would have taken the deal. I never would have dreamed we
Yeah.
actually got everything, So
Mhm.
we oftentimes don't dream big enough, and that's been one of the things that's great. So, and Gracie herself has just been the biggest dream. Like,
Mm.
because when you talk about, she's just like her mom. So it was like when I made Karen, I got 2 of her. I got her, and then I got the junior model. So I got one to marry and one to raise, and they're just so alike. And
Mm.
man, they're both fun, and I just love both of them. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another one of those things that the Lord had a different idea of how that was all going to pan out, how it was all going to work out. And it was not what I envisioned. It was messier
Mhm.
and harder than
Mhm.
I thought it was going to be to have that kind of family, but so much richer and so much deeper than anything
Mhm.
that I was expecting. So
Yeah.
I just got to say, the Lord's ideas on how he does some of this stuff and what he's doing are so much better than our own. And
Yeah.
he richly blessed me with Karen and with Gracie in ways that I never would have seen, never would have
Mm.
expected. And I'm really proud of Gracie, and I'm proud of Karen too. This has not always been an easy journey for her either. She had her own story of, how she got single and how she found herself, with a daughter to raise. And, that's a whole story into itself. And I just kind of entered into that in the middle. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I got to be a part of that story. It's such a cool story. And
Yeah. 100%.
they're such wonderful, both of them love God in ways that I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I just say they do. They have a passion and a fervor that I've never seen it anywhere else. So I love it
Mhm.
because it something that I can feed off of sometimes. They're just really powerful in that. Both awesome.
No,
So
that's
I'm glad you
amazing.
brought that up. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think.
Gracie's been fantastic. I mean, just, and again, that's something that down the path that I was determined and had a vision around, that just wasn't going to manifest. And on the
Mhm.
other side of all that pain, there's Karen Gracie.
Yeah. Which is amazing, and that's how I even I got to know you. Without that, I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah, yeah,
Man,
you were hanging out with Gracie when I met you, I think, right?
yeah, it was her and Ben for sure. Just in River Chase being involved, which is that was think about that. That was probably 6 to 8 years ago, maybe. Probably further back than that.
Yeah, so coming to a close, I really just wanted to say that I can't say enough good things about my dad. Um,
Mm.
I just kind of want the listeners to know how hard he fought for me. And I don't even understand
Mhm.
everything that he did to when he was fighting for me. But I know that growing up, me living somewhere else where he saw me max, once a week and on the weekends. And you're really only talking Saturday that he's actually seeing me and not driving me. So at the max 2 full days a week, he drove an hour and a half. Um, and if you're counting all that driving, he drove Wednesday and then he drove back and then he drive down Friday and then he drive back Sunday. So we're talking that those many days driving. So
Well,
just
you're
constantly.
forgetting your football practices
Oh yeah. So not
and your
even,
football
not
games
even.
and your band
Okay.
practices. Yeah,
Well,
Oh shoot!
because it was funny. I was talking to Karen about this the other night, and I said the same thing. I went back and forth 2 days a week. She's like, no, no. No, it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
She said the same thing. You're forgetting the football practices and the whatever. And it was a lot of driving for sure. But I wouldn't. I mean, Thomas, it was worth it. I mean,
But I'm saying that's like 2 days of us actually hanging out max, if you're counting out all the driving and stuff. So he would do that and just constantly made an effort to be in my life when everything was against him. And I was growing up in just this crazy, just this world lost in time, really, and not surrounded by the best people either. And just he kept fighting for me. And the man that I am today, I would not be anywhere close without him having done any of that. I honestly can't believe it. I never would have seen myself being in the shoes that I'm in now. So I just can't say enough good things about my dad, really. Just how he invests in people, how he invests in me, and just tries to make a difference in everybody's life that he comes into contact with. And it just means the world to me. I cannot say enough good things.
So I am really proud of you, son. I mean, none of that would have happened without there had to be some willingness on your side.
There was.
You couldn't. I couldn't have done it if you weren't willing to listen. And sometimes those hard circumstances like that, they really forced me to be intentional, because I did have some challenges of logistics and timing, especially, in the early years. I stayed around a lot more. I served out a term, and I did things to kind of make sure I was close.
Right.
And then as time went on and I had responsibilities elsewhere and things, I had to manage that a lot more carefully. And then I had to be a lot more intentional with when I did have you, that I was really focused on what principles I wanted to teach and what character things I wanted to try and develop in you, and what mistakes. And this is something I hope Thomas will remember. But we used to spend a lot of time talking about, here's the mistakes I made, and you're going to be hardwired to want to make these same mistakes. So don't do these things, because this is what I did. Don't chase achievement. It's cruel master. I remember talking about that a lot. So I tried to lean into those things. But I appreciate you guys and your compliments. But honestly, you'll know a tree by the fruit it bears. And so I'm more proud of what you guys are doing and the role that you guys are out doing. And you guys are going to do so much more and do it hopefully so much cleaner and less messy than I did in the kingdom. So it's kind of like I've done a few things, but it's messy. Like it's not. It's circuitous and difficult in some of the ways, and I hope that my pain will spare you two some of that. That you can just be a little bit more intentional, be a little bit more guarded. You both should have some accountability in your life early, instead of at 39 or 49 or whenever I got started with all that. So, hopefully I've put you a little bit ahead of the game by knowing you got to have some guardrails and some men in your life that share the same values and share the same commitments, and will help you watch out for things that could get you in trouble and lead you astray, and not just for the things you don't do, but for the things you should be doing. That's the piece that I think we didn't talk about enough, is these accountability groups and that kind of thing. Really, your focus should not be on what you don't do. I mean, there's got to be some of that. I call that the left guardrail, but the right guardrail should be, here's the things you should be pursuing.
Yeah.
Here's the kind of conversations you should be having. Here's the things you should be thinking about. Here's how you should invest your time and your money and your treasure.
Right.
And here's how you should talk to people. And here's the kinds of conversations that you want to start and the ones that you want to lean into.
When you pull out those good weeds, you have to put good fruit back in its place, or the weeds just come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully some of those kids from 15, 20 years ago will tell you, I used to say nature hates a vacuum.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah,
just won't,
vacuum.
it won't tolerate a vacuum. So if you take something bad out, you have to put something good in or it'll just fill up.
Well, I just knew it needed to be said that if I had not gotten out and seen the world and just been exposed to church and had those roots planted, and same for Andon, I'm sure if he hadn't had a place to stay where there was just healthy relationships and a clear focus on God, that neither one of us would be the man that we are today. So it needed to be said, really.
You guys both
it's an
have
honor to
some
have
other
you on.
people in your life too, but thank you. I do appreciate it, and I'm honored that I got to play a role with both of you. But no, nobody does it alone. I have a question for you two.
Okay.
All right, so be careful because this is going to get published. So give give a little thought. What can I do better to serve you two?
Like a quality time and a words of affirmation type of a person. Those are definitely like my love languages. So I would say just better like checking up on me, because if no one, if like I have to do better with reaching out to people, and I've worked on that. But just to get some people to reach out to me and say, hey, how are you doing this week, or how are you doing today? And just I'll be, I'm the most honest guy I feel like I know. Like I'll tell you anything and everything you want to know. And then also just like whether it's with Thomas or just me and you, or we just find we just do something, whether it's go out to eat or me and you and Thomas go fishing, something like that. That's something that I feel like we could do a better job of our relationship, and just like the kind of fatherhood, spiritual fatherhood that you've offered and you've had in my life, that it'd be more consistent.
A great
So that's what I
answer.
would say.
Very
Yeah.
good
That's a
answer.
great answer. I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I bet.
Can we do it without
What about you,
Thomas?
Thomas?
Hey, you know what? You guys do it then. I'm just kidding.
Bruh.
Yeah. For me, I don't know. It's hard for me to ask for a lot more, to be honest. Honestly, I'll just say what you used to say about your dad is at the stage of life that I'm in right now. I have a lot of advisors. I've made sure to do that, especially just people who are walk well in their faith and people that I trust, and just advisors from everywhere. And it says in Proverbs that the king with many advisors wins all the battles. Anyway, but you being my father, you're kind of my guy. So I'll tell you like you used to tell your dad. If I come to you with something and whatever you say, I'm probably going to do it. So you have to be very careful what you say. I don't know that that's something you can improve on. It's just me telling you that I trust you. But yeah, I don't know. But
Well, you're quickly reaching a point where I got to with my father, where at some point he when he realized like I really was doing everything.
yeah,
Because I spent a lot of years where I didn't, and it was kind of a revelation when I realized the protection that spiritual authority gave me, and I started really using it. And it became kind of scary to him because he was so used to my little rebellious streak, of I'd ask him for advice and then I might take it and I might not. And
so
when he
as
realized
a
like,
dad, he reinforces the things he thinks you need to hear. But then when they know that like you're actually going to do it, they're like, all right, well, let me think about this actually.
Let me give it some more thought. Yeah.
yeah, he got really, really deliberate about that. And then at some point he just got very reluctant. He was like, hey, you're a man, you make your own decision. And I would have to really press him and lean in to get it.
He didn't want the weight of your choice.
Yeah, he got harder and harder. I'll try to spare you from that. He always made me work hard for it once he realized I was really listening. But again, what an honor, what a blessing it is to just have young men that come to you and say, hey, what should I do? I mean, again, that far exceeds my vision. My goal was, that y'all, if I managed to get y'all into the faith, I was going to think I had done a pretty good job, and boy, y'all are so much further along and doing things. And I'm really proud of both of you. I hope you guys know that, and can't wait to see what else you guys do.
No, I think we'd love to have you on, sometime in the future for sure. Just how things are just going to keep on developing in our lives and your life as well, with ministry. But just to reiterate, like it's been an honor to have you on this podcast, and we did something a little bit different than what we've done with many other guests before. Of like, I just wanted this to be organic. I feel like I've got a lot of advice from other people, and just like let the Spirit move with the questions that we ask. Like your story's powerful. Let's make sure and recognize your position, because that clarifies and gives people clarity for what you do, but also their past and how it defines you and how God redefines those things is important. And just for things to have more of a natural and organic conversation, for you to be part of that, like for you to be the first real part of our podcast episodes, for us to do that is a big deal. And we appreciate you for that, and just everything you've been doing in our lives and you're going to continue to do. We just want to keep on honoring you and love it on you the best way we know how, because you've shown us. You've been a great example of that. So if that's the way I could end it, I would just say that. And also, we always make sure to do this with every guest. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to promote, or anything you want to just make sure and remind people of, whether it's the fundraising day on the 16th or just, did the thumbs up thing. Just anything you want to remind the guests of before you leave.
Yeah, if you can't make the fundraiser for the ladder on May 16th, then we have a Venmo, PayPal, Cash App on the website. If you'd like to invest in somebody, 100% of the proceeds go straight to helping people. We are very good stewards of it. We're very careful with it. And it's hard for me to say. I mean, when I look at you two guys, I was going to say probably the thing I'm most proud of is the ladder, but then I think about what you guys are doing with your accountability group and your podcast and everything. I'm more proud of you guys than that. So I'm proud of all of it. And hopefully, I'd love to see you guys get plugged in a little bit more with the ladder. So you guys come and meet some people. I need to be handing that thing off to the next generation too.
You just let us know.
That's been kind of the difference between Kevin 1.0 and Kevin 2.0, I like to call it. This second time around, I'm really much more interested in raising up leaders and handing things off to people, and much less about how this makes me feel or look or present or whatever, is that's what got me in trouble. So I want to just make sure that I'm keeping an eye on that and trying to stay very, I guess the word would be humble, but it's really just more cautious. Like, hey, I know how I got in trouble the first time around. Let's just make sure we're raising up other people and trying to make sure that things are getting handed off, and we're developing other leaders and making them better. So I really want to be focused on that. Yeah. So hopefully I can get you guys plugged into that.
Hey, I'm ready.
May 16th is a good time to come.
Yeah, come to the fundraiser, Brandon.
We will make sure.
I'll be there. His poker table that he's going to set up.
Okay, bet.
We talked about Karen and Gracie a little bit, but I really just want to make sure that people know how much anything that I'm part of, or anything that has been good or decent in the last 18 years, Karen has been instrumental to it. Like you can't do this kind of stuff without support, tolerance, and belief. Like she has the same values. She cares about the same stuff, and just really kind of not just believes in me, but is always willing to open her home, share our finances, whatever it is, she's been willing to do it. And has stepped up to also just really, in the same way that I tried to step in and fill a role for Gracie, she's tried to be anything she could be for Thomas and Timothy too, and just, try to be in their lives and help invest in them too. And I couldn't have done anything that y'all were interested in talking about today. None of it would have happened without Karen. And I'm always amazed that she puts up with me as well as she does.
Well, that's such a great way to end it, is honoring your wife. And we honor Miss Karen as well. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And can't wait to come to the fundraiser May 16th.
May 16th.